Hello, hello, and welcome to the fourth episode of the From Nature to Nurture podcast. I am your host, Danielle, and I am so excited to bring to you this very special plant profile. So, the reason that this plant is very special is because we're going to talk about the medicine, the physical medicine today. But in our next episode, I am going to cover all of the folklore of this plant. Because there's so much folklore. I have personal folklore with this plant, but also just historically. Yeah, it's a plant that's been worked with for a very long time and has a very rich history. Now, the plant that we're talking about today is yarrow, or the botanical name is Achillea millefolium. Yarrow, if you've ever smelt it before, has a very distinctive scent. It's really hard to describe. It is kind of spicy smelling, like arugula, but it has like some sweet undertones to it. It's just so unique. And one of the things that I love about yarrow is just smelling it and looking at it, to be completely honest. Obviously, I work with it as an herbalist medicinally, but yarrow is just so beautiful. It comes in many colors, but it's typically thought that the white is the most medicinal, so that's what you will see most often. That is what you will see growing wild. I believe the colors are cultivars of yarrow. And if you're in Tennessee, yarrow is a native plant here. I have found it here in the wild, which was absolutely crazy. Like, I screamed. I was so excited. But it does come in many different colors. I have a pink and a peach color. I've seen more of a fuchsia at another local garden. So on top of it being just a beautiful medicine for us, it's also a wonderful pollinator plant and just truly stunning and can be used just as landscaping. So as we start digging into yarrow, we're going to cover the herbal energetics first. As a reminder, herbal energetics describe if the plant is cooling or warming, if it is drying or moistening, and then if it is tonifying / tightening or relaxing. So these describe how the plants feel and settle into our bodies, and then they give us clues onto what the herbal actions can be. The herbal actions describe how the plants act in our body. Pretty simple to remember. So, taste-wise, yarrow is bitter and pungent. It is also an astringent, so we can tell that it is tonifying and tightening and drying based off of that quality. And it is cooling. One of the biggest benefits of yarrow is its first aid herbal actions. So I'm going to cover those first before we get into all the other wonderful benefits that yarrow has. So first off, yarrow is a vulnerary. A vulnerary means that it heals wounds. One thing to keep in mind with vulneraries is a lot of times we think of wounds as just topical, like cuts and scrapes, but we also get internal wounds. Think of like leaky gut and ulcers and things like that. So vulneraries are a wonderful herbal action to incorporate both internally and externally. Yarrow is also antiseptic, antibacterial, and antifungal. So it makes a wonderful wound wash. I will just make a tincture of it, and sometimes I'll leave it at full strength, but it can be really stingy. So sometimes I'll dilute it down a little bit and then just keep it in a spray bottle and use that as a wound cleanser. Wonderful first aid remedy to kind of keep around. And then it also helps to soothe inflammation, both internally and externally. It works with an assortment of different types of inflammation. So from wounds and burns to mucosal disturbances to joint inflammation, helps with rheumatoid arthritis and other low-level autoimmune conditions or allergic reactions that kind of settle into your joints. And then it is also a styptic. So styptic means that it stops bleeding. I'm not going to talk about that yet. I was about to share some folklore, but we're going to hold on to the next episode. So come back for the next episode because I was about to say something. But yeah, styptics to stop bleeding. So especially when you use it as a poultice, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but even just as a tincture can help stop bleeding internally and externally. So this is a wonderful plant to keep around for pregnancy as well, because of the chance of hemorrhage during birth. So, wonderful plant to kind of help slow the bleeding for that, but also just cuts and scrapes slow that bleeding. Now, as we start getting into the other herbal actions, one thing that I want to mention is yarrow has this really unique duality about it, where I just said it stops bleeding, right? Well, it can also induce bleeding. So, plants have this beautiful innate ability to dig into our bodies and read what we need. Now, yarrow is also an emmenagogue. An emmenagogue is a plant that induces menstrual bleeding. So, if your cycle is late and you are just sick of waiting for it and you're trying to get it back on track, an emmenagogue is the way to go. So it has this really interesting ability to be able to start bleeding and stop bleeding. Pretty crazy. Plants are so cool. There's a few plants that do kind of similar duality things like that, but yarrow is really special and really unique in that way where his pretty serious action of starting bleeding and stopping bleeding, those are pretty serious. And it does both. It's so cool. So, as we start moving away from the first aid actions, we start looking into some of the other benefits of how you could work with it on a more daily basis. So, first, because of that bitter energetic that it has, it is a bitter tonic, which means it helps to stimulate the appetite and digestion. Because it's really cooling, it's also wonderful for hot type of digestional disturbances such as like acid reflux, or if you get like really hot feeling gas, can be a wonderful plant to help soothe that as well. It also has an affinity for the liver and the gallbladder on top of the stomach and the small and large intestines. So it's working through like all of our elimination processes and being able to help our natural detoxification systems to be able to process everything that is going into our bodies. On top of that bitter tonic quality, it is also a circulatory stimulant. So this can help with sluggish venous circulation and hemorrhoids. It's a vasodilator, so it's going to help move the blood to circulate and bring in fresh oxygen and nutrients to all of our organs. So we see a lot of blood abilities there with the styptic and the emmenagogue and the circulatory stimulant, which is really, really cool for a plant to work on like our life force, like our blood is what keeps us alive, right? So then we move into the diuretic and the alterative actions. So diuretics and alteratives help to circulate fluids and eliminate fluids through our body. So diuretics are wonderful for urinary issues, for edema, that excess swelling. And the alternatives are wonderful for our skin, liver, kidneys, and digestive system because they are pushing everything through, moving everything through, keeping things flowing efficiently to kind of help, again, like work on that natural detoxification system and keeping things lubricated and smooth. Now, when you look at these herbal actions, you can probably start picking out some contraindications. Like you don't want to work with yarrow if you're pregnant because of that emmenagogue blood starting ability. On top of that, some people develop photosensitivity from long-term use, and then you should always watch if you're allergic to the aster family because that's where this plant falls into. Now, when we start looking into uses and different preparations, we have a good bit of options. So first and foremost, first aid wise, is a poultice. Now, a spit poultice is what is most common. So that is where you take the plant and you put it in your mouth to kind of mash it up. And then you create this little wad and you put it on top of that wound and then you wrap it to kind of help hold it there like a natural band-aid. It works as a natural antibiotic, antiseptic, anti-inflammatory product, but also it's going to help staunch any of that bleeding because of the styptic quality, and then it has that vulnerary quality of being able to heal that wound topically as well. You can also make a poultice with dried plant material if you don't have it fresh. We just need to rehydrate it with some water and use it that way. You can also make a tea out of it and soak that and put that on the wound to help with that cleansing and blood staunching as well. The only thing that I will say is if you're going to work with the dried plant material and do a poultice, make sure that it's not powdered because the powder will get stuck in the wound and irritate it. You want to do like chopped yarrow, not powdered yarrow. So even if you're buying chopped yarrow and you're down to the bottom of the bag where it's pretty powdery, I wouldn't use that for a poultice. I would just, take that to make an infusion of some other kind. So you can also use an infused oil and make a salve, kind of for that same topical ability. That is how I first worked with yarrow, was making a yarrow salve and use that topically, again, for that wound healing, that staunching the bleeding, antiseptic, antibacterial, anti-inflammatory qualities. Next up would be a tincture. So if you're using fresh yarrow, you're going to want 60 to 70% alcohol. And if it's dried yarrow, you can use 50% alcohol because you don't need to worry about the water content diluting it down. Like I said, you can just take it straight as a tincture or make a wash out of it where you keep into a spray bottle. But if you're going to make an herbal first aid kit, I would leave it as a regular tincture and then just drop it on the wounds as that wound wash, because that way it's already in a preparation type where you can work with it internally or externally on the go. On top of a tincture, you could also make an infusion. So that would be making a tea, and I would do 1 tablespoon of yarrow to 8 ounces of water. One thing to keep in mind when you're making infusions is to cover your cup while it's steeping. A lot of the volatile oils escape in the steam, and those hold a lot of the medicine as well. So put a little cover over it, use a saucer. They make tea toppers. I don't even know what they're called. I have one. I don't remember what they're called though, but they're teacup size little like silicone toppers that you just put on top, and that way it catches the steam and that rolls down its condensation back into the cup, so you're receiving all of the medicine. Again, an infusion can be used topically or internally as well. So like I said, you could soak a cloth in it and put it on the wounds, or you can drink it. Now, another way that I have worked with yarrow is in a sitz bath. So a sitz bath is where you make a hyper concentrated herbal bath. So you are not filling up your whole bath. You're only sitting in a few inches of water. This is really great for vaginal issues. So you really just need enough water to be able to cover that area of your body. But essentially, you would just make a really strong decoction on the stove and then pour that into the bath. Or you can start with your bath water really hot and steep the yarrow in there. So you're kind of making a decoction in the bathtub. Now, when I was doing this, I would sit in it for a few days, every day for anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes. And after those few days, everything cleared up. It was really good. You could look at adding other plants into your herbal sitz bath, but yarrow is a wonderful one and done because of the antifungal, antibacterial, and antiseptic qualities. So there you have it. There is a yarrow plant profile. Next week, we will talk about the folklore, which I am so excited for. I'm just so excited. I love folklore, but yarrow is just magical. As far as this episode goes, if you do anything with this plant, please, please, please add it to your herbal first aid kit, whether that is a bit of dried yarrow in a bag so you can make a poultice, or if you make a salve or a tincture, whatever it is, add it to your first aid kit. You will not regret it. Hopefully you don't need it, but you never know. With all of the amazing benefits that it has, it's just a wonderful plant to keep on hand for everyday use, for first aid use, whatever. Everyone needs it. So get going on making your own yarrow product. To learn about my other offerings, you can find my website at rootandwandercollective.com, and I'll see you along the plant path.